Hello and welcome to Radical Democracy. I am Maddi Cheers. I am very thrilled for episode 51 to welcome Hannah Starobin, who's the co-founder of
Twisting the Plot.
Twisting the Plot. Thank you.
And for women over 50.
Yes. And our title today is Radical Boomers. And I have here with me my dear friend, Marianne Francisi, who's also joining us today.
Hi, Maddi.
Hi.
Hi, Hannah.
So
Hi.
I really wanted to do this show because instead of the latest, young people line to put us down, okay, boomers, I feel like it's okay, boomers, that we should be really proud of ourselves in this generation. And I also think there are a lot of people who are. I think the whole okay, boomer, okay, blamer thing is just one of those fads that's going on. So, but we are specifically here to talk about solutions. That's what we do on this show. We don't like to complain. We like to remember that we are coming from a place of gratitude, and when we are in that place of gratitude, we are stronger. We are coming from a position of strength, and that's when we can be the most creative. So I'm going to ask Hannah to please say a little bit about yourself and why you started Twisting the Plot and what all this is about.
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me here today. And well, I'm a psychotherapist in New York City with a creative arts background. My first career was in the theater. And I co-founded Twisting the Plot with my partner and long-term friend, Cecilia Dentino, who's a psychologist. And we've actually known each other since undergraduate. So we go back to the late 70s together. So we have a lot of history. And we found ourselves in our mid-50s sort of saying, is this it? We were sort of like, what now? What next? And we found ourselves trying to really contemplate that the narrative of our mother's generation didn't seem to fit us anymore. And we found that the stories out there for women over 50 were a little slim and narrow. And our goal was to explore how could we shift that story? How could we make it lively and exciting time, and how could we use all the strengths and knowledge and experience that we felt we had to kind of expand the idea of being over 50 as such an exciting time, not a time to kind of shut down, withdraw, disappear, which was sort of what the culture was telling us to do. So that's really how it started.
That's wonderful. And I think that message of how to do that, whether you're 50 or you're 15, is what's truly important, because I think especially today, we come across a lot of young people that just don't seem to know how to define themselves in this new and unusual and chaotic world. I was just talking to a young man today who's in his 30s, dear friend of ours, and he was saying that same thing. He was saying that, he's an acupuncturist and a Chinese medicine person, so he spends a lot of time on his own. And he said, and when I crawl out from under my rock and look around me, I go, let's crawl back under the rock, because it is such a challenging time to be here. So I think it's a particularly good time for women and men of wisdom to speak up and to let everybody know about the things they've discovered as far as creating your own life or being more creative in your own life.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I think it's, that's one of our things, is because we both have a creative arts background, was how to integrate the science, the experience, and the creativity to sort of find a new way, a new path through to sort of really bring something to the world that's going to make a difference.
So what I wanted to hear about this new program that you've started that Marianne's involved with you in, the 12 in 12. Is that have I got the title right?
Right, 12
You've
women,
got it
12
right.
months.
Yep, 12 women, 12 months, and we say mattering and making a difference. And what we've done is we've gathered 12 women from all walks of life. Marianne's definitely in there with us. And everybody's going to bring to the table a creative project, something that they want to put out into the world that's going to make a difference. And the group will support each other. We will provide some framework for it to help people kind of come up against the roadblocks that they may hit, either through not feeling creative or the mindset or those kinds of limitations. And we're going to help them through those kind of hurdles. And the group will support each other to, within a year, create a project that will make a difference.
Wonderful. So is this going to be 12 different projects or one large project?
12 different projects. Everyone has their own
Excellent.
individual idea of what they want to do.
That's wonderful. And I think that that's a message that we really need to bring to everybody, is that regardless of what is going on in your life, you can be creative. You can express yourself in a way that's going to enlighten you and also enlighten those around you. You know, it's like viva la evolution. I mean, we really need to get in touch with that idea of creativity as something anybody can do. It doesn't matter if you're working at McDonald's or if you're directing a movie. I mean, everybody has that inside of them, that not only ability to create, but usually the desire to create and express themselves and find a public voice for that sometimes. Sometimes it is good enough to dance in the mirror, but very often, especially in these times, we do need to find outlets for that self-expression. And I was going to turn it over to Marianne, especially with your work with kids, but also in your own work with being an author and writing and how that affects you and you're dealing with younger children.
Well, you know, it is interesting, this idea of creative solutions, right? And I think that everything in our culture does push us to, when there's a dilemma, to crawl under that rock, right? Like, let's crawl and let's isolate. The thing that I adore about twisting the plot is this can only happen with the support of the community, because launching a creative solution is scary. It's thrilling, but it's also terrifying, and it is having to move that boulder that we're under off of us. And I think that's what community does. So it's interesting. This week we announced we're doing Aladdin at school, the musical. So we were announcing the parts, and we put out this carpet, the magic carpet that they fly on. And we were talking about it with the kids. And I asked them, I said, can education be a magic carpet ride? Like, is there any way? And they weren't getting the metaphor. They just couldn't get it. I'm like, is there any way here at Spark that it's a magic carpet ride? They're like, when it snows, you put down a carpet in the entranceway. I'm like, So the director of the play was there, and she said, well, how about we start with this? What do you think it feels like to sit on a carpet and all of a sudden it starts flying?
Wow.
So now the kids start saying things like, what does it feel like? Scary, but exciting, so much energy, enthusiasm, like wonder, these words. So then we were like, okay, have you ever felt that feeling anywhere in any of your classrooms? And that was the bridge, the feeling of what that might be like, this magical carpet ride. And they started to share when I was doing my science project or when I was learning the violin. So I was thinking about it afterwards, and I thought, where is my feeling of the magic carpet ride, right? Because being part of 12 and 12, I'm now thinking, what project am I going to do, right? Like you said, I'm a writer, so I can say I'm going to write that book that I've been working on and publish it. But that's not really so scary for me. That's not a magic carpet ride.
Right.
And I really think what Hannah and Cecilia are going for with twisting the plot is a sense of something out of our reach, something that we wouldn't quite be able to do on our own. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, when have I felt that feeling? And it really has been in moments where I have been in a position where I have had to spontaneously rise to the occasion and come up with some form of creative solution, whether it was with children, a client, a moment in community, and the element of not having it scripted. Right? Not really quite knowing and then having to rise to it. So one of the projects I'm thinking about possibly doing for 12 and 12 is taking a step further with creating a show for kids. So my out of the reach kind of feeling is, and I don't even want to say, every time I say it, I feel embarrassed, but Hannah says I should say it. It's like my version of the Mr. Rogers, right? Like Principal Marianne. Here I am with puppets. I don't think I'd be as low key as Mr. Rogers, but it's certainly all about supportive, emotional, and social development and authentic interaction. In order to do that, there needs to be this element of spontaneity versus the scripted dialogue. So how that unfolds, it's still a mystery. And I think that's the other piece. Maddi, you and I have talked a lot about that, the hero's journey, and that once you answer the call, like, okay, I'm going to step onto this carpet, you enter into a mysterious process.
Exactly. And I think that is the humanity of one doing something in community, two being bold enough to fail or succeed, because some people are equally afraid of succeeding as much as they're afraid of failing. I know I kind of have fallen into that category often. And I think that the idea, especially with children, of having a human being. I think that was the power of Mr. Rogers and some of the Captain Kangaroo and all those people that when we were all younger, is that you were seeing a human being, not an animated image, not a character in a purple dinosaur suit. You were getting this love and attention and creativity from another human. And I think children really, truly relate to that deeply. We've talked about that in terms of storytelling. I've said this a million times. I can be with the rowdiest bunch of kids. You know this is true. We've worked together in this way before. You can be with the rowdiest, most off-the-wall group of kids, and if you start with a story, they will settle down. You will all lock into each other, and it's the best icebreaker there can possibly be, possibly other than singing a song. But actually storytelling really draws us together. So that's what fascinates me about this project, is that it is storytelling. It is human.
Yes,
it is,
so much so.
Whether people are choosing to tell their story through painting or writing or creating a kids' TV show, whatever that choice is, it's the idea that we are supporting each other in community with other humans.
Well, and even I don't actually know this, Hannah, but how did you choose the name? Because the name itself, Twisting the Plot,
is great.
Is really looking at life as a story.
Right.
Right? So what made you choose that?
Well, it's interesting because we both come from a theatrical and a storytelling background, and my father was a writer, and I grew up in a storytelling household. So it really was that idea that the we want our plots to twist. We want to have a page turner of a life.
Right.
We don't want to have just a and then it ends. You know what I mean? We wanted to be engaged, and I think storytelling, is an ancient way of connecting with people, and is a way that we really, for me, I always remember story. I can tell you from a clinical perspective, if you give me a case study, I will remember that because it's a story.
Right.
Versus dry information. It's just how my brain is wired. But I think lots of people are wired that way to learn from the idea of story. And when you talk about Mr. Rogers, I also think about, in this idea with you, Marian, is the intimacy of those conversations.
Yes.
Of those,
so
that there's he was telling which I know you do, a bigger story, but doing it in a way that felt like you were sort of sitting just you and Mr. Rogers and whoever he was talking to. Mm-hmm. It felt very intimate, and I think there's something in that piece of it too.
Yeah, and something in the fact that that what you're talking about doing is allowing the other person to be validated. I think that is really important, that to recognize, to have somebody older or a peer, whoever it is, value you and value your voice. And I think that is something that young people are trying to do on social media, but it's shallow. And I think that's where we come in, having had those experiences, to say, hey, we're going to do Women's Circle, or we're going to join us in this project, to let younger people know that they can create, that they can express themselves, that their voice is very valuable to us. And not just in a way where we expect you to show up at every protest march, or write something on Facebook, but there's a way to take what's meaningful to you and make it into something that shares that meaning with the rest of the world.
Well, and I think that there's this other layer that's occurring to me, which, with you saying authenticity, Maddi, and Hannah, you talking about intimacy, there is a performative quality right now, right? People are creating personas and they step into them, but a sense of truly coming to and having platforms where there can be a sense of, like, who are we as human beings?
Right.
What does it mean to be human today? One of the things with Twisting the Plot that I also think it's very interesting, it's for women over 50, solutions for women over 50. So, and I have certainly felt that place of, okay, my children are off, they're doing their thing, I have this time, but I do feel like there is a big push in the culture to be like, okay, you've had your life.
That's it,
like,
right.
That's it. And even you, Maddi, I remember starting this show when you decided to do Radical Democracy, you said, it's now or never. Right. Like, this is going to be a year of action. We have talked about things for the last 20 years. Like, now is the time to just take some action towards creating something new.
Exactly. And that's why the idea of radical democracy, we've talked about this before, how it's become radical to actually include people as opposed to exclude them. To say that the term democracy represents that higher value of everybody being equal, everybody's voice being heard, everybody's beingness acknowledged, and that we've talked many times on this show, and I'm sure, Hannah, you know a lot about this, but when you take it, how do we reframe this democracy so that people feel like they're represented and heard? You have to go back to education. And if you listen to the very smart people talking about changing education, they are talking about putting in more of the arts, putting in making sports available for everybody, doing, having an education that enhances that which makes us the most human.
Well, it's funny you bring it back to the idea of the democracy, because when I took my very first workshop with Hannah and Cecilia, I came out of there and I thought, like, this is a covert mission to create a revolution.
Yes.
Because women over 50, we've got time, we've got energy, we are not preoccupied with the mundane things of 10 loads of laundry every week. Like, oh my gosh. Like, if you start harnessing this power of, okay, how do I create as a woman other than having babies
Right.
or accomplishing what I'm supposed to accomplish
Right,
or
right.
making money. Wait a second. Like there can be a real rise.
Exactly. And that's why I said earlier, viva la evolution, because I think that's what we're trying to do.
To evolution, yes, true.
Yes, I mean we really are trying to we're sort of going back, like I've said many times, and you have discussed and I've discussed many times that, you know, if we go back to the ancient cultures where being the wisdom keeper, hitting that age,
Yes.
was so respected, and you became the teacher, and you were expected to share the wisdom and the knowledge that you had gained over your life. And the sad thing about the okay boomer phrase is that it's like, no, we don't want to hear from you. You guys got us here. And the you know, and then to return that phrase with, well, okay, blamer, it's not bringing us together. That doesn't achieve anything. It just it doesn't make us wise if I'm the boomer sitting there going, well, you're a blamer. No, well, you're a boomer. Well, you're a what are we, two? You know, no. Right. it's our responsibility as the ones who have been through this life and have come out the other side of 50 and 60 to listen and allow them to be heard, but also, like you're saying, to find a new way to express all of this that lets others know they get to have a voice too. Yeah. And I think that's what's brilliant about 12 and 12, Hannah.
Yeah, I mean, we have found it's not like anyone is lacking for an idea. Right. And we haven't found anybody who goes, oh, I don't really want to do anything. I mean, I'm sure there are people who aren't that interested, but we have found people hungry. It's more like, which idea do I pick? Yeah. You know, they're ready to do something, to make change, to change the culture, to feel part of things. They don't want to fade. They don't want to sit back. And right. I always say this, whatever your politics, I was at the Women's March in D.C. the first time, right after the inauguration, and it was the most moving thing to see so many women that my age saying, I got time. You know, I want to make a difference.
Yes.
And it was, okay, great. We're going to make a difference, you know?
Yeah. And then part of that difference has to be, going back to the Women's March, to be inclusive. We can't say, you disagree with me as a woman, therefore you're not a woman. I mean, you know, that has to, and I will say that the Women's March has evolved to the point where they are more inclusive of people. Yeah. And I think that was part of the motivation for the Women's Oneness Project, is to say that we as women can sit and talk with each other and then include men who are feeling lost or feeling like, whoa, what's, you know, my role, my definition is like out there somewhere, which we'll talk about next week more. But I think because it was interesting today that we were talking about doing women's circles, and we were talking about the women's retreat we have coming up in February. And one of the guys, again, was like, can we do something like that where we have women and men, you know? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure we are, when it's time for women, I'm totally into women and men doing their separate own thing, but also to be able to say, yeah, this is a great time to include you. Let's listen to each other. Let's see what can we honor about what men are feeling good or bad about. What can we honor about their voice, and bring together in a creative way something like what you're doing that includes everybody.
Well, that's interesting too, Hannah. What was your decision to go with solutions for women? Because I do think what you're the center of what you're doing does speak to an experience that is specific to women.
Right.
Yes, I mean, it does. And part of the decision was the idea that, you know, the invitations are pretty slim after 50 for women.
Yes.
That men have more opportunity in many cases than women do. So we decided to be specific to that. But yes, I mean, what we're talking about, it fits young kids and men as well. In fact, interestingly enough, on our podcast, we've interviewed some millennials, and one way to say, how do we set the runway so that you look forward to being over 50, that you see it as a great time? We've interviewed a man, and we will interview more men, because we want it to be inclusive. We want the voice to be bigger than just us, in a sense, that we are hearing from all walks of life. Even if our focus is to change this narrative for women, we can't do that without listening to the whole audience.
Yep.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. And when we look at the idea of democracy, it is important to get that message out there so that we do understand going forward that we are the government. The government serves us, and we have to restructure the government that we have now. We have to remind them that they are serving us, and that allowing people to have that voice. I think Bob and I briefly last week mentioned the peasant mentality, that Western mentality that there are those who rule and those who do not. And that there's some either divine division or some monetary division or some religious division that creates that idea that, well, I'm never going to be powerful enough. So our job, those of us who know that we are individually equal and equally powerful to anybody who is to serve us, is to let everybody know that your voice is equally important. That's what democracy means. I don't have to agree with you, but I do want to hear your voice. And that's what I love about the idea of your project, is that it's allowing people, it's saying, yeah, we're going to support you in the community, but we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to tell you how to express yourself. So my question, go ahead, Hannah. Sorry.
I'm just going to say, yes, we've never wanted to be prescriptive about what that is.
No.
We don't have an agenda of what your life over 50 should look like.
Right.
We want to help you create the life that you want, make the difference that you want to make, be in the world the way you want, not our idea of that.
Excellent. So I was going to ask Hannah and Marianne, if there's somebody listening out there and they want to start, they can't get a hold of you, they don't have a group near them, but they want to start down a road of expressing themselves, of finding the validity of their voice. Are there activities, practices, things you would recommend to somebody to start down that path?
Marianne, do you want to go or you want me to?
Go ahead, Hannah.
Okay.
I
I think any creative endeavor, I personally think writing is really useful, because we often sort of bounce ideas around in our head, but we can avoid the weird discomfort that comes with certain parts of it. I always think of it like a pinball machine, And so when you write it down, you have to choose a word. You are honest with yourself. You hear things, I wish that I could what? I've always felt, so I think writing is a great way to start to begin to figure out what it is that you want to say and have to say, what's important to you. But I think any creative modality is a great way to start that, to become just aware. And I think then it's about finding like-minded people to talk to who fall into the same. So you start to create your own community of people who are saying, yeah, me too, I'm a little restless. I got something to say, know?
One of our first exercises, right, in the project is to do a life review, a brief autobiography, but really focused on where our strengths started to rise, where we started to see what our true aspects of our strengths are based on our life story. And that in itself is such a powerful reflection, because it was a little bit overwhelming, the thought of, okay, I've lived for a while. There have been a lot of chapters so far. What do I write? And truly, it's just get it in one page. This isn't the novel.
Right.
But in doing that, what does start to emerge is this, it's like my book, The Sacred Weave, a sacred thread that does run through every life, what starts to happen is we miss it because we don't have enough time or
Right.
make the space for that kind of reflection of what is the lesson here, and how did I show up? Who was I in that moment? And the themes start to emerge, and the strengths really boil down to a few, right, that we each bring
Yeah.
into this lifetime. And then it goes back to my, revolution idea here is that if we can identify that as our superpower, whether
Yeah.
it's our heart, our compassion, generosity, ability to see potential in others, authenticity, those types of strengths, those types of qualities, the same way like when the kids were able to connect to the feeling of the magic carpet, the feeling of what it felt like when we stood in our power.
Yeah.
Like those are the moments that we don't get to revisit often enough.
Yep.
And even if
Even if
go ahead, Hannah.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's it. Go.
No, I was just going to say we've even had, when we did a workshop, and I don't know if you were at this one, Marianne, but we had people tell their story, a story of them of their best selves when they showed up and they felt as their best selves to someone else. And someone else, the person they spoke to, had Post-its and wrote down the strengths that they heard in the story, and then gave them to the client, to the person telling the story to take home with them.
Wow.
I heard compassion. I heard selflessness. I heard creativity. And it was so moving because we don't often recognize our own strengths or our own abilities. We're so busy being busy that we don't kind of pay attention. And having someone else acknowledge those values and strengths that you put forth is incredibly moving. So sometimes it's helpful to tell someone else if you feel like you can't find your own.
Oh,
That's
is
wonderful.
wonderful.
I know. I love that.
Right in sync, Maddie.
Yeah. I mean,
we,
wow.
we are blind to it.
Yup.
We're like
Yeah.
so used to evaluating the pieces that aren't our
Right.
strengths, the ones that are our
Absolutely.
weaknesses, and trying to build those. But like to
Yeah.
really sit with someone else.
That's brilliant. And I really, that is something that's a practice.
That
is
is.
something that we can do for each other. When we come across a young person, an older person that is really feeling like, I don't know, this is not going that well, that you do that, Hannah, that's genius, that you do that
it's bearing
storytelling with
witness.
each other.
Yeah.
And I love that. That is a solution.
Because also talking about, as women, right, a moment where we were at the best version of ourselves is like bragging.
Yeah.
So to
Right.
take it out of that realm of, it's really about identifying and feeding. Right? You tell the story, Maddie, of which wolf are you going to feed, right?
Right.
Feeding the part that that can do good, that can empower
Right.
us, can empower the world. Beautiful.
Beautiful. And it will make you better at whatever it is you're doing. It will make you a better parent to be able to sit with somebody
Yeah.
who's a peer and do that for them. And then, I mean, there are some people that are naturally very good at that with their kids, but some people aren't. And a lot of times I think when parents feel so challenged or feel like they have nowhere to turn, a lot of it comes from not being validated. A lot of it comes from what you just said. We feel inside like we're not good enough. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we have a culture that tells us we're not good enough, that there needs to be more. It's never enough. And this is a way to find that enoughness in yourself.
Yeah.
And from that, because from that is where we are able to find creative solutions.
Yep.
So if I know, like one of my strengths is I'm able to really see potential in others, right? So that's a strength of mine. So if there is a problem with someone, knowing that, know then, okay, I have to use this strength to do some inventory on what is the potential here in this person that can perhaps move through this situation in a different way.
Right.
Right? It's like going in, knowing who you are and and using it. Again, I keep going back to for good solutions.
Right.
That's what a creative solution is. Out of the
Right.
box a little bit.
And it's leveraging your strengths, which we
Right.
don't often think about. We spend so much time thinking about where we aren't valued or where we aren't successful instead of where we are.
Right.
And so it's then saying, oh, I know I could fix this. I know what to do. I know how to share. I know how to help this person. And sort of taking that as your mantle instead of being something that you just kind of hope you fall into.
Right.
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 And that is the thing, is that making that connection is what ultimately gives someone the confidence to be creative. And I think, if I were going to sit there and do this, I would write down every little thing that you said and look at it every day and remind myself. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be old, so I'm in that place where I really find I've said this many times in circle that, being in your 60s is pretty cool because you're really in the here and now. It's kind of like we were talking about being over 50, what you guys were saying about that, is that if you get to this point where you feel strong enough to use your voice to say what you mean, then you basically are doing it now. It's why I don't script the show. It's why I want it to be, spontaneous.
Yes.
I want everybody to feel like this is a powerful moment. I remember Tom Porter who's the Mohawk spiritual leader. We learned a lot about the Great Law of Peace from the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, and he was talking about the Great Law of Peace once. And one of the women in the audience asked him, well, why don't you write all this down? And he said, because it's not supposed to be written down. Because you and I are supposed to be here, share this moment. If I'm good enough as a storyteller, I'm going to tell it to you the way you need to hear it. And if you are really listening, you're going to hear whatever messages are in this story for you.
In this moment.
So
if you hear the story a year from now,
Right.
you may be hearing something else.
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of what you're doing.
Yeah, because the perspective changes as we all change, and what we learn from the story would be different as looking back over our lives is different, My perspective of experiences I had when I was younger, if I told you 20 years ago about that experience, it will be a different story when I tell it now.
Right.
Yes.
Because I've learned other things from it. I've had different reactions,
And as with all storytelling, or all creative expression, it gives us that place to connect with each other. We start to see each other's humanity in whether it's a movie, a mega movie, or it's just two people sitting around validating each other and listening.
Well,
Right.
there was an activity we did, Hannah, where I think it was called Whoops. Was that it?
Yes.
And this, right, this is sort of a practice in preparing and looking, not being afraid to look at the obstacles, right? Do you
Exactly.
If you could speak a little more to that.
Well,
it's
the
wonderful.
idea is to plan and then if you don't anticipate the obstacles, the research shows that you need to pay attention to the obstacles and imagine how you're going to get through them, not that they won't exist. Because if you imagine that they won't exist, then you're not going to actually do it because it doesn't. It's part. The journey is the process. If you go back to the idea of story, and that it isn't without obstacles or problems. It's more imagining those and sort of integrating those into, well, I know I'm going to come up against this obstacle and I'm going to have to work on this, or I'm going to have to find my way around this wall or up over this wall so that I can ultimately get to what I want. It's the hero's journey in that sense.
Right.
So that alone, you can be like the thing that I took away from that exercise was sort of an optimism around the obstacle.
Wow.
So let's bring obstacles to our imagination and even imagine some solution to that obstacle.
Exactly.
Whether it's
Exactly.
real or creative or supernatural, let's just imagine it and then go to the next step of then how the journey continues. So that level of preparation actually starts to diminish the avoidance, because that's
Right.
what I know I come up against is
too.
I have a lot of strength in idea generating.
Yeah.
Right?
Me too.
Yay, another idea. This is great. And it's starting to launch. And then there is an avoidance as it starts to become more real in a human way.
Yep.
Right? Like messy and difficult and not quite the way it was expected to go. Okay, let me go back under that rock again.
Right.
So
Well, there's so many obstacles that happen, particularly, and by the way, I'm actually 60 and will be 61 in a couple months, so I'm also in that ballpark. But the idea that that those things, life is messy, and life, we have women who are going through health crises and divorce, or have lost their jobs, or their issues with their children. I mean, life is hard. There are a lot of changes that happen. And so we have to be able to integrate that into the story and continue on in our journey versus let that be the thing that defines us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's refocusing.
Right.
It's a lot about refocusing. So we have about 3 minutes left, ladies. Any final words, Hannah?
Well, first of all, you can reach out to us if you want at twistingtheplot.com, but also,
Twistingtheplot.com?
I hope people will, twistingtheplot.com.
Excellent.
And as our website and our podcast. And there's opportunity out there. I want women to see the future as filled with possibility.
Yay. Wonderful. Mayor?
I am going to give a big plug for your podcast because this is really, it's a wonderful, wonderful series of, like you said, a range of people really just looking at this question. And when you were asking Maddi just about like, okay, what are things people can do? One of the most beautiful things now is people are listening again.
Right.
Podcasts have like exploded and they're listening, and it is just a way to feel less alone in the struggle and back to a sense of, okay, there is this brewing of community, and if I can't join here, there are other places,
Yep.
other ways.
So, Hannah, where do we listen to your podcast?
We are on iTunes and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. And it's called Twisting the Plot. And we really tell the story of women over 50. We talk about some of the science, but we also just tell the story. We wanted to expand the narrative. And so we have people, as we say, just facing change, in the middle of change, in the messy middle, or just coming out the other side. And all of it is told. We don't want it to just be people who have the solution. Sometimes it's people who are discovering them as we speak.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So that is a wonderful way to end. I'm going to plug Spark Elementary also.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks for
Maddi.
being on, Marianne.
Yay.
Come take the magic carpet ride.
Right, come take the magic carpet ride. Oh, may all elementary schools turn into Spark ultimately. That's my wish. And I just want to say to everybody, thank you for listening. All the people that listened in today, thank you very, very much. I want to say thank you to Bobby Lacera, our producer, and everybody here at the wonderful Strong Island Radio and Strong Island Entertainment. And I want to say to you guys out there, question authority. Especially the authority in your head telling you not to do it. Don't listen to that authority. You are good enough. I want to wish you all, as always, peace, love, and unity. Thank you for listening to us today. And we are done. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Hannah.
Bye, Hannah.
Bye. It was wonderful. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks. I think we're done. We're still on the air, Mary. How funny is this?
If we're still on the air, P.S., we are going to do our moon circle. So I was thinking that in circle, maybe around we can have everybody tell a moment where they were the best version of themselves in this last month.
Oh, that's great.
Right? Because I was that's like something to amplify by
Right.
the fire rather than to burn away.
So, for those of you interested in starting your own women's circle,
Yes.
it only takes one friend. That's how I started this one 13 years ago.
Yes.
One friend hanging out at the house, got a call from, we're adopted into a Lenape family, and got a call to start the women's moon circles again. And there was a friend at the house for that full moon. And we did. We started it again. We started it with just two of us, and then it's gone on for 13 years.
But now you've done posts, Maddi, right, on Women's Oneness
Yeah.
about how to start a circle.
Yeah, and please join us. If you're listening on Facebook, join the Women's Oneness Project. We'll keep you posted. There's posts up there about starting your circle. And while we're still here, because I don't know, I think we're on the air, and I don't know where Bobby is, but I'm going to answer the burning question. What is all this stuff in front of me?
Have people
Somebody
been
asked me.
asking
Yes.
you? Really?
So I'm very big on altars. Those of you that watch the project, I did or have watched one of the videos I did on altars. I like a visual reminder. So on my altar, I have. Can we see this? I don't know.
Guadalupe, is that?
Yeah, it's actually the
Mother Mary?
Mother Mary of Miracles.
Miracles.
So we need some miracles. I love miracles. I love that idea. So that's representing the feminine.
Marianne Williamson talks about miracles, and I really agree with her in this way as a shift in perception. So simply by, I see it another way, that's a miraculous moment. Like it
Wonderful.
doesn't have to be, I've risen you
Right.
from death. Is our miracle.
It is a miraculous moment,
Right?
that shift in perception. I love that idea. So then also here, I have, can we see this? Am I holding this up so people can see? I have no idea.
Oh, I can see the TV. Yep,
You can?
That
Okay.
looks good.
So here's Buddha representing the male, the divine feminine. We've got the divine masculine. I like that balance. So I've got, it gets bigger, my altar, like the ones at home. They just keep growing. And then I've got the yin yang symbol for balance, because that's our big thing here, is to include everybody, to keep everything in balance, to recognize the duality. What appears to us as duality is actually not, is actually a oneness. And then, of course, inspire. So my little inspire rock. Did you give me this rock?
I don't
think
know.
you did.
Maybe I did.
So inspire, that's part of the reason we do the show. And then the two big guys, the two, St. Michael and St. Francis, because in our world, there are beautiful symbols from the Western world, and sometimes we talk about, the West this and, that, and Christianity this, and that one of the things we strive to do on this show is no more stereotyping, is let's get away from that. Let's recognize the beauty in all of our cultures. So we've got St. Francis, who was a protector of nature and teacher of the natural world, and St. Michael, who fits into your overcoming obstacles.
Oh, for sure.
And I could have easily have had Ganesh here too. And of course, the Virgin of Guadalupe, who I became very familiar with and you also, with making friends with people in the Mexican culture, and that wonderful culture that has given us. When we look really far back, she appeared on the Aztec moon goddess site where that temple used to be. So she's a very powerful figure for us.
And I think it's beautiful that you're explaining the guides today on your altar, because we're talking about creative solutions, right?
Right.
And in really manifesting our creative solutions, we need guidance, right? We need our earth walk guides.
Right.
And we need our family guides sometimes, and we need our spiritual guides, and the choice of a certain energy. It's a vibration.
Right.
Right? So when you talk about Buddha or Mother Mary. It's the vibration of peace. It's the vibration of compassion. It's the vibration of protection that we're invoking. And the thing about the altar really is a map.
Right.
Right? It has the directions. It tells a story. And as you were telling it, I thought, like anyone launching a creative project, to begin to create an altar for it, right? Like I'm thinking about my project.
That's a great idea.
Like what would be the intention? What word would go on my altar for this project?
Right.
Maybe it's intimacy and authenticity. Right? It keeps me focused. That's the energy. Maybe I have a little picture of Mr. Rogers on my altar, right? Because he's going to become a guide for me.
Yeah.
So what can help us to stay within the bounds and have this visual reminder on a daily basis to call for help?
Yeah.
Like,
and I
we
think
need
that's really
help.
important.
We need help in doing something new in the world, having a solution to something that isn't quite working.
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of community and what we were just talking about.
Oh my gosh, I love this idea. I'm doing it tonight.
I think you should have an altar for everything. I mean, I do, but it is useful. It is useful to remind yourself if you're doing a new project, even if you're dating somebody new, if your intention in the world is I want to meet a companion of some sort. Anything that gives you that visual reminder can't hurt. And that spiritual reminder.
Right, because altar is a sacred space.
Right.
Right? So it's the sanctity of the project. This means more to me than just, my everyday kind of tasks.
Right.
I'm elevating it, and I need to tend to it in that way.
Yep.
It's not a sloppy choice.
No.
It's a very conscious decision of what you're putting, what you don't want to put on there, to again stay aligned in the gratitude of I have this opportunity right now. Like I'm in human form.
Yeah. I get to do this once.
I'm embodied.
Yeah.
Like I'm embodied. My soul is going to get to possibly create something divine in the world.
Yep. And I think that you hit a really important word in your statement, elevated. I think that is what we need to think about when we're creating, are we elevating? Are we elevating ourselves? Are we elevating those around us? Or are we bringing people down? I mean, which doesn't mean you don't do controversial stuff. As a matter of fact, it probably means you should do controversial stuff, because the idea of accepting controversy and that takes courage. I mean, that's what we talk about with the hero's journey. That it's part of what has held people back in the past, because you're going to get criticism. You're going to get people putting you down. So you've got to say, but the journey's worth it.
And we are human. We will be pulled into criticizing and judging or being angry. And to have a mirror that can reflect back, okay, how do we make it right? Yeah. How do we find the way to resolve and find another way of moving through the emotional aspects
Exactly.
of that? That's what makes it scary. You're right. That's what makes it courageous, worthwhile.
Yeah. And we take, when you are vulnerable, when you make yourself vulnerable in the world, you are going on a hero's journey.
True.
And that's a lot of people don't recognize that. So we do build the walls and we don't take the risks. And for good reason. I mean, this is a tough culture. We've talked about this a lot, that, there's so many chaotic messages coming at people all the time, that to try and synthesize out of that your place in the world is not easy. And so when that's part of what we were talking about today. Even if you're on your own, how can you do this, or how can you sit with that one friend? But when you make yourself vulnerable like that, you are opening to everything. You know, you are. There's that quote about, you know, it's the cracks in the heart, it's the
Yes.
wounds
Yes.
in the heart
Yes.
that let in the light. I can't remember who said it. Maybe one of you knows, and you can type it in. But you know, I mean, it's true. It is the wound that
And
lets in the light.
And it's sometimes the wound is the wake up call.
Yeah.
Right? When we have taken the prescribed path or the the path that's just been laid out for us and we feel like we should be on. Sometimes that's what wakes us up.
Yep.
Finally.
Definitely. So Bobby has returned.
So Bobby, we thought we were done 10 minutes ago.
But we're not.
So this has been our PS, which is awesome. But that's great, Maddie. I think this was
Fun.
Gave me something very special and an idea about the altar.
Yay. So I hope all of you out there got something very special and an idea.
You called in spontaneity.
Right. And you're feeling inspired. So one more time, thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everybody here at Strong Island Radio. Thank you, Marianne, for showing up
Yes.
today.
Love
and
talking
Hannah.
to you, Maddie.
And next week tell us who's coming next week, because you're back. But this is
Yes.
very important next week. So I'm going to take my extra couple of minutes before 5 and go with it.
So one of the things that I've personally spent a lot of time in my career on is really supporting and empowering girls. And being in schools now, I've started to notice that our boys really need to get some support in both being able to have the vulnerability to feel and express it in ways that can allow for deeper connection, right? If a boy's feelings get hurt, they'll usually just be like, you're annoying. He was
Right.
annoying. Like, that's it. It's one word. So we have with us a very talented young man who is a behavioralist, and he's been working with our boys groups, and his name is Philip McRory, and he is going to be coming into the show next week to really talk
Excellent.
about his views on the current state of boys and what they might need to be supported in development right now.
And we are very much looking forward to that visit. So thank you all again for listening. Peace, love, unity, and we will see you next week with Philip. Yay,
Yes,
talking about
great.
our boys.